1.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's September 23rd at 4 p.m. I'm going to call this COB monthly meeting to order. I'll start out with reading the appeal statement. Pursuant to the provisions of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan laws, please take notice that decisions of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County Community Oversight Board may be appealed to the Chancery Court of Davidson County for review under a common law writ of cert. Any appeal must be filed within 60 days of decision by the board. Any person or other entity considering an appeal should consult with an attorney to ensure that time and procedural requirements are met. You can establish, I think we have quorum here, but I'm going to go through and take a roll call for to see who's present. Mr. Campbell-Gooch.
Present. I think Walter Holloway is in the attendance list, by the way.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Campbell-Gooch. Ms. Davis. Ms. Davis, are you here? I see her listed. We'll move on. Mr. Goddard. He's not here either. Dr. Hildreth.
She'll be late.
Okay. Mr. Hughes.
I'm here.
Holloway. Mr. Holloway. Is that you, Mr.? I think that was him. Dr. Lewis. Ms. Ross.
Present.
Mr. Sweeney said he would be late, and Mr. Witzel.
Present.
Okay. So, Ms. Davis, are you here with us?
Mr. Holloway, do you help me?
Got you, Mr. Holloway. Thank you. So we're missing, I think we still have quorum, if I'm correct. Yes. Okay. I will move on to the electronic meetings statement. Mr. Pinkley, can you go through that?
Thank you, Chair Martinez. So as we've done with all of our other meetings, I'll just provide quick background and then we'll just need a motion and a vote. With Executive Order 16, Governor Lee suspended in-person quorum requirements as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. That executive order was extended with Executive Orders 34 and 51, and then most recently with Executive Order 60, which is currently set to expire on October 28th. So for today's meeting, what we need is to have a motion and a second for holding this meeting electronically to conduct essential business to protect the safety and welfare of Tennesseans.
Do I have a motion?
This is Davis, so move.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Second, anyone?
I can second that, Mr. Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Any focused discussion on that? Not, I will go through a roll call vote here. Mr. Campbell-Gooch?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Goddard? I don't believe he's here. Has Dr. Hildreth joined us yet? No.
She's joining.
Okay. Mr. Holloway?
Aye.
Mr. Hughes?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis, has she joined us? I don't think so. Ms. Ross?
Aye.
Mr. Sweeney hasn't joined us yet, and Mr. Witzel.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well, so that passes. Let's move on to the approval of the minutes. If everyone's had a chance to review it, we'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes?
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Any second?
A second. This is Mr. Witzel.
Thank you, Mr. Witzel. Any focused discussion on the minutes? If there's none, I will go through a roll call vote again to approve the minutes. Mr. Campbell-Gooch.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Goddard, I don't know if he's joined us yet. Dr. Hildreth, is she with us yet? Not yet.
She is, and she needs to be moved into the panel.
Okay, I will wait on. Well, I moved.
She was just moved over.
Okay. Dr. Hildreth, we're voting on we're voting to approve the minutes. If you have a vote. I'll move on to Mr. Holloway. Mr. Holloway?
Aye.
Mr. Hughes?
Aye.
Has Dr. Lewis joined us? I don't think so. Ms. Ross?
Aye.
Mr. Sweeney is still not with us, and Mr. Witzel.
Aye.
Dr. Hildreth, are you with us now? And you had Dr. Hildreth?
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Thank you. I apologize for the technical difficulties. I am present. I do not know what the vote was.
This is the vote to approve the minutes.
Approved.
Thank you. Good. The minutes are approved then. We'll move right into the chair remarks. I'll be quick because I think we should be focusing on the updates we have from our colleagues here about the MOU and the policing policy commissions. I will note that we have one change in the agenda. Mr. Bunton cannot join us today, but I know that we will hear more about his role in negotiations with the MOU from Dr. Hildreth. Then I continue to be in touch with Mr. Bunton, and I've spoken with him several times over the past few weeks to make sure that we maintain that open line of communication with the COB and the mayor's office. Since we last met, we've conducted 2 community town halls. One was focused on victims' rights advocates, survivors of domestic violence or human trafficking, and mental health communities. The other community town hall was focused on Black, Hispanic youth, LGBTQ, immigrant, and refugee communities. Despite some technical difficulties, I think we had better participation in the first of those 2. So I would ask you all to increase participation in this last one, to send the flyer that we have to the different community organizations that you are a part of or work with, so that they can spread the word to their constituencies. I know for this last community town hall, I was able to get the LGBT chamber, for example, to include that in their newsletter and on their social media to promote it. So we definitely had many members of the LGBT community calling in, but I think we were lacking in members of the other communities that we were targeting for that town hall. So the next town hall is this Monday, and it will focus on faith leaders, senior citizens, formerly incarcerated, and residents experiencing homelessness or housing insecurity. So if you are part of any church, I hope that you can send it to your congregation, to we get more participation in the next community town hall on Monday. Last Friday, I was invited to speak to the Metro Council's LGBTQ caucus. At that caucus meeting, I reiterated our need for their support, each of the council members' support on the new MOU. And I also thank them for voting to approve the ordinance that authorizes the COB to request that Metro Council issue a subpoena on its behalf by resolution this time instead of by ordinance. So this ordinance passed. So now to get a subpoena, to get Metro Council to issue a subpoena, we just have to ask City Council, Metro Council for a resolution and get at least 21 votes. I asked them to look into the procedure by which we can go about requesting that they issue a subpoena. Specifically, who we make the request to. Do we have to make it to a specific council member? And how will the subpoena be issued? And how will the subpoena be enforceable? So they are looking into that, and I hope to have some answers soon. I continue to be in touch with Director Fitchard almost on a daily basis, and we talk about updates for the MOU negotiations and discuss current priorities for the MNCO. So I'm really happy that Dr. Hildreth and Director Fitchard have been able to meet with Interim Chief Drake and Deputy Chief Hager to discuss the new MOU. And I'm looking forward to the next Rules Committee meeting where we can take up the new MOU when it's ready. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but if there aren't any, we can move on to Dr. Hildreth for the update for the MOU negotiators report.
Thank you. To the chair and to the members of the board, it is good to be here to be able to share with you the progress that was made in our last negotiation meeting to benchmark those major issues that were discussed and give some indication as to how we move forward. In preparation for this and in close working with Director Fitchard, we have assembled a timeline that I think it is important maybe to revisit a little bit to help understand the context in which the current conversations occur so that we can all make our own independent assessment as to where genuine progress has been made and where opportunities still may exist. So we recall that there were police officer involved shootings that occurred on May 13th, May 21st, and June 3rd of this year. So on the first full COB board meeting following that timeline, on June 24th, we had an MOU discussion where Director Fitchard explained the necessity she believed to update the MOU between COB and MMPD in order to strengthen the weak areas that existed and became manifest in attempting to respond to those three events, right? That time, Member Sweeney commented that the MOU was designed to obtain information to operate within the areas of our responsibility, that MNCO should have the same access to OPA, the Office of Professional Accountability in the police department, has in investigating, and that Mayor Cooper should publicly state that he supports the equivalency between the COB and OPA. So at that time, myself, Member Hildreth, endorsed Member Sweeney's analysis, stating that the conduct of the police is up to Mayor Cooper. So per Member Sweeney, we as a board moved that the MOU should be reopened according to then existing provision section 14 that indicates that either party could call for a reopening of the memorandum of understanding at any time. At this June 24th meeting, we voted as a board to reopen the MOU. We also voted that the negotiator, whoever the board appointed to lead this next round or represent the board on this next round of negotiations, should participate in the Rules Committee, the Rules Committee being that body within the COB that we have decided is responsible for crafting and drafting memorandum of understanding that will be presented for negotiation. We made the recommendation that the negotiator attend that rules meeting. That motion was passed. Member Ross moved that I be retained as the COB authorized negotiator. That motion was also passed, right? So that was it. Chair Davis at that time stated that the Rules Committee would take up the MOU and that we move forward. That was in June. At the July 8th, our Rules Committee convened. We met to review the existing MOU, to identify those areas that should be amended to meet Director Fitchert's concerns. And in attendance at that meeting were board members Sweeney, Hildreth, Goddard, Martinez, and Ross. Okay, that was on July 8th. July 22nd was the next time we had a full board meeting. At this point, Member Sweeney moved the approved new MOU draft that happened at the Rules Committee, and I seconded. That motion was approved. So we had a draft that was ready for discussion that was approved by the board on July 22nd. Okay. On August 25th, the next full time that the board met, we acting interim police chief Drake came to address our meeting on WebEx, also acknowledged that he had received that draft of the MOU from Executive Director Fitchert. And at that time, I'm sorry, I misread that. On August 25th, Chief Drake met with Executive Director Fitchert and received the MOU. That was the day before our meeting. Our meeting for COB was August 26th. At that time, Chief Drake attended, gave his support to revisiting the Memorandum of Understanding, indicated, I believe it was at that time, indicated that he was willing to be an active, direct portion of those part of those negotiations. And on August 26th, the board indicated that they now wanted to move forward expeditiously with this negotiation and specifically asked that a different negotiation meeting that was already planned for September 1st with members of the mayor's office, the police department, executive director Fitchert, and I also believe the district attorney's office. That meeting was scheduled for September 1st. Our board, COB, asked that that meeting on the 1st be turned into the MOU discussion. This is where I had phone conversations with John Bunton in the mayor's office. I believe Executive Director Fitchert also had some conversations. We went back and forth and we agreed that the September 1st meeting would go forward as scheduled since the topics were intended to be slightly different than those indicated on the MOU. And it was stated that perhaps good progress on the 1st would make the MOU meeting more effective. The next step in this chronology is we actually did have the formal MOU negotiation meeting on September 15th. Okay, so from June to September, we voted to create the new document. We did that. We presented to it within our board. The public had an opportunity to weigh in, and then we went to the table. When we went on September 15th, I think it's important to note that we did have expanded membership. The first time we negotiated the MOU, there was one representative from the police department, Deputy Chief Hager, one from COB, myself, John Bunton representing the mayor's office, and also Bob Cooper representing the legal office. Many of us on the board may remember that that was the mayor's design in response to a board initiated and approved request that there be a negotiation team of 3 and 3. 3 from the police or mayor's office, 3 from the COB side, including the executive director. And so I would like to say that by having Acting Chief Drake and Deputy Chief Hager present, along with myself and Executive Director Fitchard, we came closer to what our original intent was almost a year ago, and it probably added significantly to the productive conversation that we had. I begin our remarks, and I would like to repeat those remarks there by extending to Acting Chief Drake an acknowledgement of gratitude for him coming to our August meeting and also for him coming and participating directly in our negotiations, that betokened the measure of respect and response that is important for this relationship to be mutual and effective, and also responsive to the legal mandate that all parties have. So with the 4 of us at the table, also joined by John Bunton and Director Fitchard, you'll have to correct me. My notes in my mind is lapsing. From the legal office.
Cindy, her name is Cindy Gross.
Thank you. Cindy Gross was representing from the legal office. So with us in the room, we proceeded by going through all 15 sections of the draft MOU that was created by the process that I've just outlined. And in doing so, I referred to the red line copy that we had in that Rules Committee meeting to highlight the 3 main areas of difference that would be subject to probably negotiation discussion. Those 3 areas were 1, access to records, 2, access to crime scene when there had been an officer involved shooting or another triggering event where MNCO needed to begin its direct investigation. And number 3 was the location of the interview of a police officer subject to MNCO negotiation. A 4th issue that came to the table on September 15th was a relatively recent product of a 1-page draft memorandum of understanding between the district attorney's office and MNCO/COB concerning access to exchange of some information related to investigations with where the district attorney's office will be involved. I will reserve to Executive Director Fitchard a more detailed explanation of that issue. What I will say as the board's approved negotiator is, while we were in possession of that document, that neither myself nor Director Fitchard were authorized to formally negotiate that document in that environment because, 1, it had not been presented to the board, and having not been presented to the board, had not yet been through our internal process, which is vetting and review through the rules process and from the rules committee. From the rules committee, and from the rules committee, a recommendation to the full board to accept, reject, or move forward with negotiation, right? So while we were very conscious of the fact that this 4th issue, this live negotiation that seemed to have a lot of promise to it, also had, I think, some language that caused us concern, that even gave further credence to the process that I just mentioned. So going through our draft, and our draft alone, we had substantial agreement on all 3 of those main issues. We had a way forward for the exchange of documents. And to his credit, Interim Chief Drake said explicitly that he did not have any problem with the recommendation that the interviews occur at the MNCO office. And so while there still may be some other language that would be negotiated back and forth about what a backup location may be, again, we were able to receive substantial agreement to our request in terms of that item. The third item being, I've lost my train of thought because now I don't have notes. So it was, crime scene access. Crime scene access, this is where it was really helpful to have Deputy Chief Hager and Executive Director Fitchard literally sitting across from each other, finishing each other's sentences about what nailing down the details of that agreement could look like. So with substantial agreement in those three areas, it was determined that the next step is the police department and the mayor's office would take the official draft that we just discussed on the 15th, take an electronic copy, and then examine it carefully, go through their vetting process, and we would come back together an additional time for a final or our next step negotiation. That next convening of the MOU negotiation team is scheduled for next Tuesday. Another next step out of that is I made a recommendation to Executive Director Fitchard that she see whether it would be possible for the COB to schedule 2 meetings of the Rules Committee, one as close to this particular meeting today as possible, and then maybe another one week out, so that there would be an opportunity to make a very rapid response, if possible, to both a response from MNPD to our draft MOU, and also the Rules Committee could decide whether or how it wanted to engage with that separate document proposed to involve working with the district attorney's office. I think that, Ms. Fitchard, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that that would be the summary of where we are right now. And so I'm going to ask you to add or correct to any elements of my report. But Mr. Chair, that would be this negotiator's report of the work that we were charged by the board to do up to this point.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hildreth. Director Fitchard, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think that Dr. Hildreth covered everything, and the next thing is just to go ahead and send out a doodle poll so that we can schedule those meetings if the board agrees.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Mr. Campbell-Gooch?
So I just have like a clarifying question. So the next time that the negotiation task force will be meeting is on September 29th?
I think that's correct. I don't have a calendar before me. Is that next Tuesday? Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Okay, and then so another question is, do we think that the MOU could be settled by the end of October, or is that too aggressive?
I believe that an aggressive time frame is actually doable, and that was part of my thinking. You know, it's very difficult for us to come together when we don't have the ability to speak outside of a publicly noticed meeting, and that was why I made the suggestion that the Rules Committee be calendared as quickly as possible so that if we had something to catch, we could take it. Another recommendation that I will make to this board today is there may be a member who would like to make a motion that would give the authority to an executive committee. So if executive committee wants to schedule a meeting before our October meeting, if we want to delegate to the executive committee the authority to accept it, I'm wondering if that's possible by motion at this meeting. So that means that it could be completed as quickly as our rules and our processes would make it possible.
Thank you, Dr. Hildreth. Ms. Ross?
If I'm correct, I think the Rules Committee, and Todd, you can verify that we have scheduled a meeting for Friday.
We had started the process of planning, but then the last email that I had received said that we were going to wait to see what would happen with today's meeting. But I do still have everyone's availability for Friday, which seemed like the best day for everyone. So if that's what the board wants to do, I can send out those invites as soon as we're done with this meeting.
I don't think that we should meet on Friday because we're moving towards the meeting on Tuesday. And I think that having the meeting for the Rules Committee would be better to have it next week after the Tuesday meeting, but I'll defer to the board.
If I can make this one suggestion, a rules meeting on Friday would make sense if the primary agenda item would be to receive the proposed MOU from the district attorney's office, to hear from the executive director and her staff as to the negotiations that she's been involved in on that, and have the Rules Committee give its proper scrutiny to that separate document. That could expedite matters, but that's just a suggestion.
Thank you, Dr. Hildreth. Mr. Campbell-Gooch? No,
I was going to suggest something like very similar, so we're not like jam-packing everything into a few meetings, and we can like hold things and give it the proper attention. But I was curious about the MOU with the DA. I'm struggling to remember if we've received that.
No, as far as I know, that hasn't been shared with the board yet, but I think it might be in a place where it can be shared with the board now, I think.
So my understanding, and this is another one of those situations where we're doing process out loud. My thinking on September 15th was that as part of my negotiator's report, I would bring that document and say, I am presenting it, this was received, formally presenting it to the board for you to receive and do with what you will. Hopefully what we will would be take it to the Rules Committee, right? I understand from speaking with Director Fitchard today that there's even been a further negotiation on the document that I saw September 15th, that those negotiations have been more favorable according to Director Fitchard, so that I'm prepared to still structurally say, I would like to formally present this second MOU that has been given to us. And if the copy that Director Fitchard holds in her possession right now is the one to be presented, then I think structurally, my recommendation as negotiator is that we receive this as a sort of counter or collateral offer that may be moving us towards our goal, that we receive it and we refer it to the Rules Committee for evaluation and recommendation.
Thank you, Dr. Hildreth. Director Fitchard, will that be possible then if the members of the Rules Committee are available Friday to review the latest draft of the MOU that involves the district attorney?
Yeah, if they're available Friday, I can make myself available Friday. I am waiting to get back the copy from the Metro Legal, and it may be in my inbox now. I think it is. So yeah, I'll have to look at it. Yeah, Friday would work for me.
Okay, and as soon as you look at that document, I think we can forward it then to the board to review, so that all the members of the board can see it, but particularly members of the committee. Are there any more questions on that? Okay.
If,
Yes, anyone?
if there aren't, then Ms. Chair, I just want to say that that would conclude my report. I thank you and the board for having the opportunity to serve, and I do want to offer an expression of appreciation for the free-flowing communication between all parties between that May, early June timeline that I indicated over the months. Parties from the mayor's office, the police department, the district attorney's office have really been present as conversation partners. And I do want to acknowledge that it was evident when we came into the negotiation room. And I think it contributes to the ability to be able from one board meeting to the next one to have a positive report that the board can take action on. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hildreth. That's certainly encouraging to hear, and thank you for all your work and the information you just provided us. I do want to follow up on something that you recommended, that we make a motion to delegate authority to the executive committee to approve the MOU should it be ready before the next full board meeting. And perhaps we may need another motion to delegate authority to the executive committee for the other MOU involving the DA. Is that something that we want to pursue? Does somebody want to make that motion? Sorry?
This is Drew. I said so moved.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kamalguch. I mean, Mr. Goddard. Mr. Kamalguch, I saw your hand up. But I'll take a second on the motion.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Any focused discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Holloway here. Well, I was trying to get my hand raised here, but apparently you didn't see it. On this matter where you have been investigated at the COB office, I know you don't have a hard time from the FOP opposing that, you know, but so far, what I've heard so far from this here, it's good information. I hope we can get everything that we can get, you know, but they're going to be dead against having them come to the COB office for making a complete investigation.
Thank you, Mr. Holloway. Director Fitcher, do you have an update on any discussion with the FOP on that?
Yeah, so I did want to say that we had Mr. Bird, the FOP representative and attorney, wanted to meet with us, and he came to our office and talked with us in regards to some of the concerns that he had, and he didn't seem opposed to having those meetings at our office. So I think that that was really great progress. We are outfitting our office to make certain that we have the recorders and the things that are in place, similar to what OPA and Metro PD headquarters has. And so that is underway now. We have a bid on our recording system. And so hopefully we'll get that resolved in the month of October. Just, you know, it's a scheduling, it has to go through the bidding process. But I was delighted to be able to have that conversation regarding the concerns that Mr. Bird, that he brought forth.
Thank you, Director Fitcher. Mr. Kamalguch, before I go to you, I just want to clear up the motion that we have. I don't think we specified whether it was just a motion for the executive committee to approve the MOU or both MOUs that are for approval. But I'll take your question, Mr. Kamalguch, or comment.
Thank you for that, Chair. That was my original question. Which motion are we in focused discussion on?
Okay, so can we what's the process here? Could we restate the motion to be more specific?
This is Drew. I would ask the chair to state the motion he's asking for, following which I will almost certainly so move.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard. The motion would be to delegate authority to the executive committee to approve the negotiated MOU between the COB and MNPD and the other proposed MOU that is among the COB, MNPD, and the DA's office. Am I correct there? I think that's right. And so we have the motion, and is there a second? Anyone second?
I second. I second.
Thank you, Mr. Holloway. Now focus discussion on that motion. Mr. Campbell-Gooch.
Yes, I just want to state, I think there's a way that we could maybe send it out to board members before we have an executive meeting, just so everyone looped in and have an opportunity to present any blocks if they have any, just to make sure like we are moving as a unit.
Sure, I think we could definitely forward it to all board members, and perhaps they could give their comments, if any, to Director Fitchard, who can then relay them to us. Any more focused discussion on this motion? All right, if not, I will go through and do a roll call vote. So, Mr. Campbell-Gooch.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Goddard.
Aye.
Dr. Hildreth.
Aye.
Mr. Holloway.
Aye.
Mr. Hughes.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Aye.
Ms. Ross.
Aye.
No, I don't know if Mr. Sweeney has joined us yet. Yes.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Vote yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Witzel.
Aye.
Right, that motion passes then. I think next on the agenda we have, I don't know if our guests have joined us already. Miss Washington for the workforce committee of the Policing Policy Commission. I'm not sure if they're with us yet. If not, we can move on to Ms. Davis and Ms. Lucas if Ms. Lucas has joined us.
Chair Martinez, if I may.
Yes.
So I'm looking here through the space. I don't see Ms. Quinn here joining us, but I do know that Ms. Washington, who is the the vice chair rather of the workforce committee, had a family emergency, is unable to join us. I believe that Ms. Quinn should be joining us, who is the chair, but we can certainly look into that if someone has an opportunity or has her email address to reach out. That'd be great. I'm happy to just kick us off with an overview to share with the board and the community a bit of the progress that's been made. If you want me to just jump right in that, I'm happy to do that.
Sure, let's go ahead and do that.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, and I'm happy to pause at any moment if our guest is here, just for an interest of their time here. But so for the past 5 weeks, the Police Commission has been meeting in 3 separate subcommittees. So these 3 committees are the Workforce Committee, that of the Policy Committee, and then we also have the focus on that of the communities, so their Communities Focus Committee. I am a member of one of the committees, so not all 3, and that's why we extended the invitation to the chair and vice chair of the other respective committees. I'm the chair of the policy committee, and joined in leadership with the vice chair, who is Amanda Lucas. And Ms. Lucas is unable to join us today due to a work commitment, but many of you may know her. She is a clinical social worker and also a therapist, very involved also with NOAA, Nashville Organized for Action and Hope. Is a former law enforcement officer as well, retired law enforcement officer as well. So she brings a very unique and important perspective as well to this space. I'm going to just share an overview of what has taken place over the last 5 weeks as succinctly as possible. And then I really want to leave the abundance of time for question and answer, and do my best to keep this as 40,000 foot high here at level for awareness. So when we first met, that first convening of the group, was really, it was convened by John Button, as well as Dia Sorello and then Eric Brown. And the purpose of the conversation is to get all 40 plus of us on the call to introduce ourselves, which was the abundance of the time during that space. As many of us know, Nashville's former mayor, Carl Dean, is the co-chair of the larger commission. So he did set the tone with opening remarks, but most of the conversation is led in these committees, and those are led by the chair and vice chairs of each committee. So we've done the group space, we've gone into our individual space conversations, and we were asked right away to decide what our committee's focus areas would be. For this policy committee, we are focusing on the de-escalation and non-escalation and use of force. We're looking at culture, and under culture, we're looking at improving and cultivating a strong relationship between the COB and MMPD, and also the promotion and incentivizing of MMPD good conduct and those with low and no complaints, but also making sure there's public knowledge and discipline of misconduct in those officers or law enforcement officers with high numbers of complaints. The third component is the engagement with citizens. And in that space, we're looking at benchmarking, and this kind of spills over a little bit into the other space where we're looking at recruitment and retention and promotion efforts. How are police showing up in the community? And I'm just going to go right into kind of what we've learned here is that there needs to be a real honest conversation about the need for police to both have, yes, a presence that exudes safety and allows people to feel safe in their communities, while also them knowing that their presence in certain communities, when there's been a history of just bad interactions and bad policing on a few, in the spice of a few, have left people feeling uncomfortable when they are present. And so there's not an automatic belief that by this committee that communities are asking for more presence of police, but rather they're asking for improved police behavior and reactions and relations as well. So we're using, in order to get to this, we've had a number of expert community members coming and speaking to us. So we've had, we've had our very own Dr. Valier speak to us about consent decrees. We've also had a conversation from other experts to talk to us about just the basic tenets of what training is in MMPD. So I'm personally very interested in what the continuum of force looks like. Is the focus on the use of force or the de-escalation or non-escalation, and what all that means. And not to get in the weeds, but it's heavy, heavy work. And we're being asked to put together our recommendations within the next 4 weeks. And that's no small feat at all, because there's, again, 40 plus people. My committee alone has 14 people. We all have full-time jobs. So we are working diligently off the clock, as well as during our weekly meetings, to bring all of this together. This upcoming week, we will be welcoming, and I just really quickly want to share, we'll welcome Captain Mike Alexander to talk about no-knock warrants, as well as Executive Director Fitcher will join us to speak about COB recommendations and best practices for improved relationships. I'm sorry for the noise here, but I have contractors here. One moment, actually. Sorry about that. So I wanted everyone to be aware of what's coming up, but also just where a bit of friction has occurred. So early on, there was a needed and important ask for data. This and all other subcommittees cannot exist unless they have information to know who is being stopped by the police, at what rate, the use of force numbers at a very bare minimum, but also an opportunity to review information that perhaps the public has not seen. And so the committee was under the understanding that we could simply request it and it would be given to us. But then there was a process that was implemented that now requires a committee to review it and then to prioritize it. I'll be very frank with you, as a member of this board, I've pushed back on that because I believe that we need as much information as we possibly can. And I don't say that to say that anyone's saying, no, we're not going to give it to you, but rather in a short frame of time, we need this information as quickly as we can get it. And so I've asked both John Button, Dia Sorello, and Eric Brown, all of them to make it very plain and clear how this information will get to the members of the committee, how we'll all have open access to this information, and then also how this information will be made available to the public. What I can tell you, and I did communicate this to Director Fitchard, that I'm still waiting for an answer on how and why currently the data committee meetings are not publicly noticed and they're not recorded or live streamed. I think that information needs to be available to the public. I've made that recommendation in writing by email and also noted it in calls. And I just simply think that we need as much transparency here as possible. My committee will be meeting in smaller groups over the next couple of weeks to prepare our preliminary recommendations. But again, myself, as well as Vice Chair Lucas, we really felt it was important that our team and our group to get together first to hear from experts and community members well before we try to put pen to paper and write out recommendations. Because let's be frank, if you can walk into these committees already knowing what you want to recommend, then how and why are you at the table having these conversations in the first place, right? So we have no preconceived notions. We just want to listen to what's out there. I'll just say one more thing here about what's to come. In the coming weeks, we will welcome experts on procedural justice. I have calls and invites out to have members of the community to speak as well. Some of those have been quickly responded, others not. We also have a former chief of police who's currently a professor at Tennessee State University that will be joining us as well, because I believe his unique perspective is needed too. In closing here, there was one last thing I just want to note here. There was a report that we received. It was called a level set packet that we received. And in that packet, there was information. And after reviewing that, the data in that packet, it was noted by several members of the commission that there was over 60-something odd cases of use of force missing. And so we are still waiting on an answer from MMPD on where that information is. They've said that they can't quite currently locate or identify or confirm, rather, a better word, who was the author of that report. On two parts. One, we need an answer to that, but also this is the type of report that should be regularly submitted to the COB for awareness, for review, for our use as well. This report was published in December 2019, and I'm still confused about why we were not made aware of it, and I only saw it a week and a half ago, and I have since then forwarded it to executive director. So I know that's a ton of information. I'll go on mute here, but as you can see, I'm trying to download 5 weeks of information here to the board within a short frame of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. I think we might have our guest on the line now, so I'm not too sure. Do we have Ms. Quinn? Okay.
This is Chris. I just want to let you know I have text with her and she is finishing up another meeting and we'll jump on as soon as she can.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions for Ms. Davis about the update on the policy committee from the Policing Policy Commission? Mr. Campbell-Gooch.
Thank you for giving that update. Just one real quick question. Has there been any conversation about expanding public safety to include things outside of policing?
Thanks, Mr. Campbell-Gooch, for that question. I can't speak for the other committees, and I'll tell you what. That's what I can promise to do, because I realized. By the way, we did extend an invitation to the third committee. Ms. Robertson of the YWCA was already scheduled, and we did not hear back from the chair there, Judge Blackburn. But we'd extend that and should keep that invite out, I believe, because we want to hear from these other committees. But I can tell you that within the space of policy, we have had that conversation. We're actually welcoming and welcome suggestions here on experts and community members that have ideas about alternatives to policing. And we're even taking on and want to talk very clearly about what defunding police and reallocating resources looks like. We realize that for some it has a negative connotation, but as a committee, we agreed that we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that there are calls for this and what those calls mean, where they're coming from. So that we expect to have that a part of our recommendations as well.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. I think we have Ms. Quinn on the line now.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you for joining us, Ms. Quinn. The floor is yours.
Thank you. And I appreciate your patience in waiting for me to get on today. And thank you very much for the invitation to address the board. I guess I'm here as the chairperson of the Workforce Committee. Whitney had a family emergency come up, and so she'll be unable to join us today. The Workforce Committee is primarily tasked with looking at recruiting, a little bit of hiring, promotion, retention, and culture. We have heard from a number of different subject matter experts. We have heard from the recruiting unit at MNPD, made up of the deputy chief, Kay Loki, and one lieutenant, and then the HR director. There have been 12 part-time police officers that have worked in and around recruiting, doing background investigations once employees are identified or recruits are potentially identified. That unit is being expanded immediately under John Drake. He is transferring 4 diverse officers, diverse in race, gender, and ethnicity into the unit to plus up that unit. We have heard from retired Deputy Chief Joey Bishop, retired Sergeant in the recruiting unit, Marita Granberry, and retired Chattanooga Police Chief Fred Fletcher, who has done a number of kind of innovative things while he was at Chattanooga in order to diversify his department. We're working off of a number of 74% white male in the Metro Police Department. On its face, that is obviously quite troubling, and we anticipate making recommendations, very specific and timely recommendations around how to begin to diversify that department through recruiting and promotion. We are going to hear from James Smallwood, the president of the FOP, on Monday night. We want him to talk about culture and the equity of disciplinary action and how that impacts culture and morale, which I think can sometimes be very intertwined. And I think morale and culture as it relates to support externally for the Metro Police Department. We're also hoping to hear from the author, and I can't remember his name right off the top of my head, but he wrote a book called The Warrior Mindset. And I think that'll be a really nice, interesting counter to President Smallwood. I think we want to hear how the warrior mindset impacts culture, potentially also recruiting and promotion within police departments. I can tell you in my 26 years in law enforcement, the warrior mindset, I think, is very pervasive in law enforcement And it does create barriers, I think, for diversity in hiring and promotion. And I'm not saying that it's an intentional barrier, but it is a barrier nonetheless. And so we're going to be looking at that. On the 5th of October, we're going to be talking to retired Lieutenant Colonel of the Colorado State Patrol, Brenda Leffler Harto, and she was the highest ranking female in that department's history. And she has, for the last 4 years, been traveling the country teaching for fair and impartial policing. She spent the better part of 2 or 3 years every week in New York City training NYPD on fair and impartial policing. We think that, and that is both from an internal and an external perspective. And we think that that will go to the issue of culture within the police department. She is married to Janae Harto, who is the retired police chief in Minneapolis. Janae was a transformative police chief, and she's going to talk about the promotional process, which she overhauled at Minneapolis, and some of the challenges created, especially when you are a minority or double minority, trying to lead a police department that doesn't look like you. I think sometimes we think that hiring a minority at the head of a police department is going to create some sort of magic where all of a sudden culture improves, recruiting improves, promotion improves, but those have to be very intentional and they have to be planned. There has to be a plan for the creation of diversity and equity in a police department. And then on the 12th, we are looking at a couple of different subject matter experts to kind of close out that portion of the data collection. We're also looking for a lot of data to come back to us from the police department. We already have the recruiting SOP and the 2018 and 2019 year-end reports on recruiting. And so we want to come at this from a very evidence-based and data-driven approach on some of the recommendations that we want to make. We want to make sure that the goals are very clearly defined and specific. They are measurable, and again, that they are timely. Some of the emails that went out today, I think, are very interesting. If you look at CALEA, if you look at 21st century policing models, 8 Can't Wait, the Metro Police Department meets or exceeds many of those criteria, but we are still left thinking that that's maybe not quite enough. And so I think as part of the recommendations and the thought behind a lot of these things, these issues, we need to consider whether or not Metro needs to move beyond and establish our own criteria, our own benchmarks and KPIs with regards to the success of the police department. And I think we shouldn't be afraid to move beyond what is the status quo and ask for something better, something more equitable, something more inclusive, something more representative of our community. And so we will be taking that data-driven and evidence-based approach, but also, I think trying to look at what the art of the possible is, and not be afraid to recommend something that maybe nobody's ever done before. If you can't dream it, you can't get there. So I think the work of the committee has been really focused. I think it's been very intentional. I think the committee has done a great job. They worked really well together. The questions are very intuitive. And the committee as a whole, I think, seems to be all rowing in the same direction. And the work with the mayor's office and support from the mayor's office, I think, has been exceptional. And I feel like we're getting the things that we need to get in order to be successful, at the end of the day. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Quinn, for taking the time to do this. It's a lot, not only being on the Policing Policy Commission, but also showing up to give us an update. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Quinn?
Yeah, it's Officer Holloway. I'd like to make a statement if I can.
Go ahead, Mr. Holloway.
She said they had about 12 retirees doing background investigation where really they need to clean house. 10 out of the 12 need to be gone because they didn't represent the police department when they were sworn off, and they definitely not doing it now. They're not getting us good applicants for the department. We've been fighting the issue of that the police department does not reflect the community. And they've been, I think, for as blacks, it's been like 10, 11% over 30 some years. And so it's something that's intended. They don't want it to reflect the community, and there need to be a change. And so if we don't push for it, we won't get it. But we've been trying for 30 some years, trying to get some changes. And we still stuck what we're doing now. And it also depends on where you recruit from. If you recruit from these little small town, people are not used to dealing with people with the magnitude, with the racial capacity in Nashville, Davidson County. They come here like they John the law, So we got to recruit people from areas that are used to dealing with people of all races. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holloway. Are there any other questions or comments? Ms. Davis?
Martinez, if I might, while we have, and I know we have Ms. Quinn here, but to Mr. Holloway's point, Mr. Holloway, you raised something very important. We learned in one of our meetings here when we were, I'm not sure if it was Lieutenant Dupuy or others that shared with us that only 26% of cadets or folks coming into the academy are from Nashville. And to, that point, that means that, running the ranks here, it is brand new to them. Most of them are coming from outside communities where it might not be as racially diverse. And therefore they carry with them some of these harmful biases that have to be deconstructed and addressed. And so we are addressing on our side of the house, we're looking at training and we're asking them what exposure they have. And already we know that they've got to get well beyond just talking about the civil rights era of Nashville. While it's important, there's a lot more that has happened in these communities. And they also need exposure beyond the first time they show up at Edge Hill being because there's been a call out. They need to have community reflectiveness there. So I want you to know that those are going to be taken very seriously. I'm sure I can speak to Ms. Quinn on that too.
Can I speak to that real briefly? I think, Ms. Davis, you're correct. We're hoping that retired Lieutenant Colonel Leffler Harto can speak to sort of internal and external implicit bias. Some of that will be about training, and we do agree that recruiting in the metropolitan Nashville area is important. Chief Fletcher talked about the advantage of casting a wide net, but he also emphasized that recruiting people within the communities is always going to be preferable because they have a stake in the community. And so we are hearing that in our committee testimony as well.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn. Ms. Ross?
Yes, I hear you mention a lot of individuals, professional individuals coming to your committee to speak. What about community speakers being involved with giving feedback on diversity and recruiting?
So we are going to hear from an author in the next meeting. We are in discussions with the Silent No Longer organization, and we hope to pave the way for them to give us some testimony on October 12th. If we can overcome some of the legal hurdles, we want to make sure they don't, and they don't want to either, speak about anything specific that's currently under investigation, litigation, or that would in any way identify a person who has been victimized through sexual assault or sexual harassment. And so we are trying to locate or identify one or two other community groups that could speak mostly about culture. We have heard from Sabina Moyedin, who's on our committee. She has provided information with regards to the work that she's been doing and her group has been doing inside the police department with regards to training. And so we are getting some information in from other community groups, and we have plans to do that additionally as well. But thank you for that.
Mr. Campbell Gooch.
Hello, Jamel Campbell Gooch, pronouns he, him, his. Nice to meet you. I think the book is called The Rise of the Warrior Cop and the Militarization of America's Police by Balco, I want to say.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
if you get the opportunity, he has a really interesting perspective on police being a protected class that no politician or government body is willing to take on out of fear. And I wanted to say, it's a pretty interesting book. I've read it.
So I'm hoping he's going to be with us on Monday.
Yeah, it should be pretty interesting. So, and I also want to mention, like, I really do appreciate the something new that you talked about. And then I also want to thank Holloway for giving us that historical context. I'm just curious, has there been any discussion around how police can invest in civilians participating in their own public safety? And the reason that I ask is because that seemed like a way to diversify who is in control of the community's public safety. Because I know people who want safe streets and who want to participate, but never will want to be a police officer. So I'm just curious if there's been any expansive conversations on how police can support citizens in like participating in their own community's public safety.
Thank you for that. And I would love to have an offline conversation a little further about that. There has been some discussion about engaging with different community groups, engaging with the Metro Nashville Public Schools, starting the group recruiting process when these potential candidates are in high school, through different programs. The Metro Police Department has engaged in some recruiting efforts with some local college universities, some HBCs. I know when I was a professor and the program director of criminal justice at Cumberland University, I designed an entire track, academic track. Sorry, my dog's chewing on her squeaky toy. I designed a whole track where a student in criminal justice would spend their last semester at the Metro Police Department, and then upon graduation from the police department, they graduate with their four-year college degree. And so I know they're doing some innovative things that's putting them in a position of access to a little bit more diverse candidate pool. But it is very heavy also, I think, on veterans and the military. And that coupled with, I think, the concerns from the community about the militarization of the police department, I think that's where that crosses. And so I think you will see some information maybe about that in our recommendations. And I think our guest on Monday night will be able to provide a lot of really good information.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn. More questions? Don't think there are. Thank you so much again for joining us, Ms. Quinn.
Thank you for having me. Good night.
Good night. I think we can move on to Director Pritchard for the Executive Director's Report. Mr. Campbell Gooch, sorry.
No, it's all good. I just had a comment to kind of tie a bow.
Sure.
On that conversation, and I'm just gonna mention it and move on. Like it's startling to me that the conversation seems to be like very limited in scope and view. So I just wanted to voice that here because I do think that might change the strategies on how we can move forward and further prop this board up and make sure it's something that outlasts all of us.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. And I think that's where we can come in as a board to suggest policy advisory reports for our analysts to pick up where these committees may leave off or, advance work that they couldn't do in the limited scope and the limited time frame. Ms. Director Fitchard, are you ready for the executive director's report?
Yes, thank you. I'm going to get through this really quickly because we've covered a lot of the topics in here. And so I'm just going to start and I've sent it to you all. And so I'm going to just highlight the most important things. So starting off, I want to talk about the personnel update in our office. So myself and AD Clausey received a total of 38 resumes and applications from in Metro HR in regards to candidates that met the main qualifications. And so those packets are now being reviewed to determine which candidates will move to the interview process. And we're trying to narrow it down to no more than 5 or 6 people. We continue to do our training. We've received 2 investigative complaints. We've had about 18 non-complaint calls. And for the community outreach portion, I have continued to work with Ms. Thompson and Metro Human Relations Commission in regards to those community town halls, which are going really well. I've also shared information about the COB with the New Hope Primetimers and NOAA. And as I move into the community safety town hall meetings, I put on here in the report the kind of numbers that we have had in the support from the community. And we're very happy to see as many people logged in and watching, whether or not they call in or not. So I'm very pleased with that. The meeting that we had on Monday, it went really well. We kind of changed the format based on some suggestions from our board members. And the next meeting, which is on Monday, September the 8th, and as you said earlier, it will engage faith leaders, senior citizens, formerly incarcerated, and residents experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity. And this Monday, we will have 3 guests that will come out of those communities. We have a homelessness advocate hero. We have a formerly incarcerated person. And we also have a gentleman from the Council on Aging to be our special guest during that meeting. And so I'm excited about that. And we appreciate Chair Martinez partaking in those meetings as well. And so our MNCO research analysts, they presented information on the use of force consent decrees as subject matter experts to the policy committee of the Mayor's Policing Policy Commission. And the research team has continued to be a valuable support to the commission. And Dr. Peter Valier also accepted the invitation to join the data committee. And so they have continued to do their work on policy advisory reports regarding the use of force consent decrees, and they're going to present that shortly. As for the Mayor's Policing Policy Commission, I have an invitation to speak tomorrow for the policy committee, as well as a scheduled appearance for some brown bag lunches. I initially was supposed to speak on Monday, but they asked me to do the brown bag lunch instead. And so I'll give you those dates when that comes up. The body worn and in-car camera update, I think, is something that we need to know. There are 127 officers who are outfitted with body worn cameras, and 85 vehicles are equipped with in-car cameras. So the body worn camera deployments were completed for traffic, the West Precinct, and the Special Response Team. And they're also doing department-wide supervisor training, and 137 have been trained to date. Deputy Chief Hagar also reported that based upon the completion of the infrastructure, which was facilitated by Metro ITS at each precinct, he expects that the body-worn camera and in-car cameras will deploy in the following order, maybe with some overlap. That would be to the East Precinct, the Juvenile Crime Task Force, the North Precinct, Midtown Hills Precinct, the Madison Precinct, the Central Precinct, the South Precinct, and then the Hermitage Precinct. MMPD is awaiting delivery of equipment to begin deployment and installs for the East Precinct, which is the next in line. And training and deployment will start around October the 26th, he stated. He said also the infrastructure build out is complete at East, and it's also underway at North, Midtown Hills, Madison, and South. And he stated that there continue to be no issues with equipment or storage capabilities. I wanted to update you all on the Criminal Justice Steering Committee meeting. I had that meeting on September the 10th, where I met with the committee members from the Criminal Justice Steering Committee, and the discussion centered around Nashville criminal justice fees and fines. And they had a consultant come in and look at their fees and fines, and there's a subsequent meeting scheduled, but we don't have that date as of yet. As for the subpoena ordinance, that was passed on September the 15th. And I had asked Mr. Pinkley to reach out to Mr. John Cooper, who is the city council's attorney, to talk about the format of the subpoena, also to just determine like what the next steps would be. And so he and Mr. Pinkley are working on the format of what the subpoena will look like, and what the process is. And so that is underway as well. And Dr. Hildreth went over the MOU meeting, and I think that was a very positive meeting. And I'm looking forward to what the police department's revised or negotiation points are when we have our next meeting. So I'm waiting to receive their response, and hopefully it will be a positive response. As for the proposed resolution reports, I have received 2 investigation files that are complete and ready for final review. Those should, I will be looking over those, and hopefully we can get a meeting scheduled for the proposed resolution reports to be presented in front of the board. And I was looking at the calendar. I spoke to Mr. Martinez about this, and we're hoping that we can do that the 3rd week of October. That would give us the 10 days. That would, number one, give me time to review both of those, to present 2 to the board in October at a special called meeting. And then that would also give me the opportunity to review them, vet them carefully. If in fact there's something that has to go back to the investigation team, then I would also have that amount of time, and we wouldn't be pushing within our 10-day limit that we have to post it online before a meeting. And so we can send out, a doodle poll and see when the whole board would be able to convene a special meeting, the 3rd week of October before, and then the next week, the 4th week, would be our regular board meeting. I did want to also give an update and have Mr. Clausey jump in and talk about the TBI MOU, because I think that we haven't really addressed that yet. And so we have some follow-up on that. Mr. Clausey?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Last week, I spoke with the TBI Special Agent in Charge, Russ Winkler, and shared with him our desire to enter into a MOU with the TBI. I also provided him a copy of our proposal. And since that conversation that he and I had, he's talked with the Assistant Director Melton, who then took that proposal to Director Roush. And after speaking, they came back, I guess, and spoke with him and said that they believe there is some benefit in having some clearly understood roles that come from an MOU. So they've committed to go over our proposal line by line in order to reach some kind of final agreement. And while Russ didn't have a final timeline for me, he did say it's in the pipeline. They are working on it. And he also, again, reiterated that he's available for anything that we need. And he has made himself really accessible to us if we had any questions or needed any clarification on anything. So I'm anticipating that to be, hopefully relatively soon we get something back from them. And from what he shared with me, the concerns that he had were very, very minimal, and something that I think we should be able to work out with no problem.
Emergency ICU units are starting.
Okay, thank you for that update. And so I really think that that concludes my September report because we covered a lot of information within the scope of the meeting. And so if you guys have any questions, I'm available to take those now.
Thank you, Director Fitchard, and Assistant Director Clausy as well. Are there any questions for Director Fitchard? Mr. Campbell-Gooch?
Not really, not a question, just a statement. I wanted to flag something for board members. I think in 2019, me and member Walter Holloway were part of a group, along with other organizers, were part of a group assembled by Mayor David Briley. If I want to remember correctly, Member Holloway was there representing the board. I was there representing Gideon's Army, and what we were talking about was a study to actually eliminate fines and fees from Nashville. The study was supposed to be put on by the National League of Cities and PFM, a New York-based research group that included former Nashville Police Chief Surpass. And I want to say Mayor Briley had presented the study to the group, and then they awarded the study free of charge. And when they told us about the study was supposed to conclude October of last year. So I just wanted to flag that for everyone on the board. We haven't heard anything about the study or the release or the findings.
Thank you, Mr.
I will say, I'm sorry. I will say, I think that that's the same group. Of course, I came in and I'm not really familiar with what the other meetings were about because I've just recently been, invited to these meetings. And so I will say that there was a form that they were showing. They said it was confidential because it hadn't been completed and they were still vetting it. It was a draft. So they had that information up as we were viewing it, but I don't think I have received any information about it. But I will say that I think that there was some concern from different participants who were in the criminal justice field regarding what was being talked about. And so once I get more information, I don't anticipate having any issue with sharing that information with you.
Thank you, Director Fitchard. Any more questions or comments? Mr. Campbell-Gooch, your hand is still raised.
I wanted to say just succinctly that the purpose of the study was about delinking fines and fees from the city budget. So it's also curious to me around the current narrative around our city budget and the loss of this report. So I just wanted to also flag that.
Mm-hmm. That's an important point. I think we can reach out to maybe Councilmember Mendez to ask, since he, it was his budget that passed, if this, or anything about this study, it hasn't been released, but if anything, any of its points were taken into consideration when he made his budget proposal. Director Fitchard?
I will also say that Mr. Bunton was there and had a lot of input into this. And so I think that, he should, talk about it as well. I will say that the sheriff was there. Of course, there's lots of fines and fees, of course, connected to incarceration or, being arrested in general. And so the sheriff was there. And of course, with him having to take over for Core Civic, there was a lot of talk around that as well as it pertained to fees too.
Thank you, Director Fitchard. So, next steps for finding out this, I think you were going to check if there was something that we could share, Director Fitchard.
Yeah, I definitely can check with Mr. Bunton and see what what they have to share, since he was there representing the mayor's office. And if you want to check or someone wants to check with the council, did you say that you were going to check with Mr. Mendez?
I could do that, yes.
Okay, all right, and I'll check with Mr. Bunton.
Thank you. Any other questions for Director Fitchard before moving on? Okay, we can move on to the Policy Advisory Report proposal. Dr. Villiers and Ms. Orozco.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Let me just get the presentation up real quick. Can everyone see that full screen now?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. So good evening, everyone. I want to thank all the board members for taking the time to review our Policy Advisory Report draft. I'm going to try to keep this presentation as short as possible. There is a lot to cover, but I want to make sure that we have time to talk about any questions or concerns that you might have for myself and Dr. Villiers. So quick outline of my presentation. I'm going to give a quick introduction on consent decrees, talk about the methodology for our report, and then cover the consent decree recommendations, which we divided up into 5 sections: using force, training, crisis intervention, reporting, investigating, and reviewing force, and research and evaluation. And then I will also cover the Policy Advisory Report recommendations in those categories. So the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division has the power to investigate police departments, and if they find constitutional violations, they can bring a civil suit against the city. Most of these investigations are related to excessive use of force and/or illegal searches and seizures. And the DOJ is really investigating patterns and practices, not necessarily individual instances of these actions. And a consent decree is the result of a settlement agreement between the city and the DOJ. And so these consent decrees are useful to us because they are basically the roadmaps that other cities have taken in order to enact change and reform. Methodology: we identified consent decrees from the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division, as well as from the Police Executive Research Forum's 2013 report on DOJ civil rights investigations. Our report focuses on consent decrees agreed to after the year 2000, and that specifically address use of force. If a consent decree was prior to 2000 or didn't really relate to use of force, they were excluded. And so there was a total of 14 consent decrees that we used for our analysis. The consent decrees were analyzed using a qualitative analysis software called MaxQDA, and this allowed us to code the consent decrees and then identify and categorize recommendations that were made by the Department of Justice. The first category is use of force, using force, and so one of the main recommendations in this category is that de-escalation be required whenever possible. This also included giving subjects time to comply with lawful orders and officers de-escalating their use of force as resistance decreases. They also recommended that mental and medical conditions be taken into account, that each force option available to officers have comprehensive policies and definitions. They also had a lot of things that should be prohibited in policies. I will not go through this whole table since it was included in the report, but common prohibitions in consent decrees include using a firearm as an impact weapon, neck hold, choke holds, carotid holds, shooting, warning shots, things that are usually prohibited, but were covered in detail in this section. In terms of the MMPD, they have de-escalation as a guiding principle in a lot of their policy and training, but the MMPD manual does not explicitly require officers to use de-escalation tactics whenever possible. Several of the prohibitions included in consent decrees are not included in the manual, but are prohibited because they are not consistent with the training that officers receive. A good example of this was chokeholds and neck restraints being prohibited because MMPD training did not teach them and Tennessee state law prohibited them. However, this was not in the policy manual until June 2020 when the MMPD released a roll call training document to update the manual. So for this section, we have two recommendations, one that was previously issued by the COB on June 24th of this year. It reads, the COB recommends that de-escalation tactics be required before an officer uses force, be it non-deadly and/or deadly, and that failing to use reasonable de-escalation techniques when circumstances permit should make the officer subject to disciplinary action. Policy should state that physical force should only be used as a last resort. The MMPD manual should also explicitly define common de-escalation tactics that are available to officers. And then we also have our first new recommendation, that is MMPD should review policies, procedures, and trainings to ensure consistency between policies in the manual and prohibitions that are covered in training. Actions that are against policy because of training should be explicitly stated as prohibited in the MMPD manual. The next category is training. So consent decrees have a lot of recommendations around training, specifically for recruits and in-service training. They recommend that these categories be covered: policies and Fourth Amendment law, decision-making and ethics, de-escalation skills, role-playing and scenario-based training, reporting, investigating, and reviewing use of force, and weapon-specific training on all approved weapons, including annual requalifications. Another major recommendation was supervisor training. Supervisor training should focus on conducting investigations, managing use of force incidents, counseling officers to minimize force and to intervene, and supporting officers who report unreasonable force. Another major category was force investigation training, force investigation team training. We'll cover the teams later in this presentation, but the training component of force investigation teams was that they receive specialized training on conducting investigations into serious uses of force. The MMPD Training Academy already meets many of these recommendations found in consent decrees. In addition to the high number of training hours, the MMPD training curriculum does include a lot of the important elements that are recommended by the DOJ, including the reality-based training, ethical decision-making, and a lot of de-escalation techniques. Currently, MMPD does not conduct promotional or in-service supervisory training that is specific to conducting use of force investigations. Supervisors take part in regular in-service training that is provided to all sworn officers, and officers promoted within the department to the rank of sergeant are provided some supervisory training that focuses mostly on management and human resource skills. So our recommendation for this category, recommendation number 2, is that MMPD should implement promotional and annual in-service supervisor training that focuses on conducting use of force investigations. This training should be in addition to the annual in-service training provided to all sworn officers. Recommended training topics include conducting use of force investigations, strategies for effectively directing officers to minimize use of force and to intervene effectively to prevent or stop unreasonable force, incident management, and supporting officers who report unreasonable or unreported force or who are retaliated against for using only reasonable force or attempting to prevent unreasonable force. The next category is crisis intervention. Consent decrees typically recommend instituting crisis intervention teams, also known as CIT. The most common recommendation is the Memphis model that was established in 1988 and is widely used around the country. Recommendations include 40-hour training for new CIT officers and then 8 hours of in-service training annually. Aside from CIT officers, they recommend that all trainees should have basic crisis intervention training and that emergency dispatchers should be trained to appropriately route calls to CIT. There are multiple models for crisis intervention teams and programs Dr. Villier made this spectrum for us from police-based programs to community-based programs. On the left, you see crisis intervention officers and what we call the Memphis model. Next, we have law enforcement referral to case management. A lot of those programs are lead programs, law enforcement assisted diversion. In the middle, we have officer-civilian co-response models. A great example of that is the Los Angeles Police Department Mental Evaluation Unit. Next, we have dispatched non-police responders. This is still a government-based model where it's a government department that is non-law enforcement. A great example of this is the Albuquerque Community Safety Department, which was just opened this past year. And all the way on the right, we have the dispatched non-police support services. And the most common one that we hear about is Cahoots, which is located in Eugene, Oregon. It is possible to have more than one of these programs and models in a city. And actually people say that it's more effective when there are multiple resources working together. It can kind of depend on what kind of situation that people are responding to. Although MMPD does have some policies and practices in place when it comes to interacting with someone who might be having a mental health related crisis, the department does not have a dedicated crisis intervention team or unit. Currently, MMPD collaborates with the local mental health cooperatives crisis treatment center and their mobile crisis response team, and they contact them for professional evaluations of individuals that are in crisis. So our recommendation for this category is that MMPD should create a crisis intervention team comprised of specially trained officers for response to crisis situations. The MMPD manual should comprehensively outline policies, procedures, and roles related to the crisis intervention program, including situation-based guidance for officers responding to the scene of a crisis. Since ACIT will require a long-term implementation plan, MMPD should aim to create a budget-neutral plan for developing the program. If additional resources are needed, those should be detailed in a request to the Metro Council for the FY22 budget. The next category is reporting, investigating, and reviewing force. So consent decrees typically recommend that force be tracked and investigated based on the severity of the force used. Typically, they recommend a 3-level categorization system. Level 1 is any force used to overcome active resistance that does not cause injury, also displaying firearms and displaying tasers. Level 2 is any use of force which causes an injury, could reasonably be expected to cause an injury, or results in a complaint of an injury, including hard, empty hand control techniques, taser deployment, impact weapons, and OC spray. And level 3, or serious uses of force, is force likely to cause serious injury, including all firearm discharges, more than 3 taser cycles on an individual, head, neck, sternum, spine, groin, and kidney strikes, and improperly applied force. Other recommendations in the consent decrees for this category are supervisors should review all level 1 uses of force. They should respond to the scene and lead investigations into all level 2 uses of force, which are then reviewed by the chain of command. And a specialized force investigation team should investigate all level 3 uses of force for both the criminal and administrative investigations. And that is then reviewed by a force review board. Currently, no MMPD Form 108 is required when official presence, verbal direction, and/or soft empty hand control is used by officers and there is no injury or allegation of injury. When soft empty hand control is used and no injuries are alleged, consent decrees would consider that a level 1 use of force. However, within MMPD, since officers are not required to complete a use of force report in that instance, these incidents are not being systematically tracked in a way that allows those incidents to be analyzed. In addition, MMPD does not currently have a force investigation team for uses of force that cause serious bodily injuries or death, as well as firearm discharges. The criminal investigation is conducted by the cold case unit, or if a fatality occurs, by the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, and the administrative investigation is led by OPA. So we have two recommendations for this category. Number 4 is that MMPD should categorize all use of force above unresisted handcuffing into 3 levels that will guide the reporting and investigation of the use of force. And number 5 is that a force investigation team should be created as a branch of OPA to investigate criminal and administrative aspects of uses of force resulting in serious injury, all firearm discharges, misapplications of force, and other serious uses of force as defined by the department. They should also investigate fatal uses of force for violations of administrative standards parallel to the TBI criminal investigation. The unit should receive specialized training in conducting use of force investigations into serious uses of force. And finally, we have research and evaluation. So consent decrees typically recommend that departments analyze their use of force data on an annual basis, and that they release a public report on use of force trends, and that they routinely review and audit use of force reports to identify deficiencies in the reporting and review process. MMPD does not currently have a comprehensive use of force report that is released on an annual basis to the public. And so our last recommendation is that MMPD should track and analyze use of force data and create an annual use of force report that is available to the public. The analysis in this report should examine the relative frequency and type of force used by officers against individuals in specific demographic categories, examine MMPD's use of force over time, and identify and address any trends that may warrant changes to policy, procedures, training, tactics, equipment, or practice. And now we'll take any questions that the board may have for myself and Dr. Villiers about the topic or about the report itself.
Thank you, Ms. Orozco and Dr. Villiers, both of you, for doing the research and putting that report together. Does anyone have any questions about the recommendations or about the report in general? Mr. Witzel?
Yes, I have a question regarding the recommendation for the crisis intervention team. So with that, has there been any thought put into whether those would be police officers who are already on the force trained to do that, or would there be any type of tension bringing in officers that may have experience from other areas, or who can be trained from the ground, who are new and trained from the ground up to do that type of work?
Thanks for that question. The crisis intervention team model is a police-based, or it's a training model for police officers that gives them specialized skills in responding to people in crisis. And so those would be existing officers. And in the implementation for CIT programs, a CIT coordinator would be appointed from within the department, and then they would guide the selection of officers. They would guide the selection of officers in order to make sure that they're selecting officers that are well equipped to have that training and be on the crisis intervention teams. New Orleans Police Department, in their consent decree, were required to train 20% of their patrol officers in order to make sure that they were able to cover every shift in every precinct. And the training for that is done with community mental health providers and professionals in the field of mental health.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Witzel, I still see you have your hand raised. Do you have another question?
I'm sorry, I forgot to lower it. Thanks.
It's all right. Mr. Hughes.
Thank you, Chair Martinez. I did have a question about next steps. In terms of these recommendations, now that we've been through the process and these have been presented, what are some of the next steps that we can expect in terms of how this process should go moving forward?
Thanks for that question. I think the process is an important piece to discuss. The process for policy advisory reports, they go to the board as a proposed policy advisory report, which then, if the board decides to release that for public comment, we would release that to the public and schedule a public hearing in order to gain public response related to the recommendations and the report. We would then convene a dedicated board meeting focused solely on vetting the recommendations, discussion of the public comment, and focus on any board concerns related to the report. And at that meeting, the board can elect or vote to endorse the report and release it.
That's very helpful, Dr. Greer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes, for that question. Are there any other questions on the report or its recommendations? If there are none, then I think we then approve it to go ahead to the public comment section.
Mr. Martinez.
Yes.
If the report is to be released, it would require board approval in order to release the report publicly and schedule a public hearing.
Right. So we would need a motion to approve that, to advance it to public comment.
Chair Martinez, I'd like to make the motion to approve this proposal and move it forward for public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Is there a second?
Second from Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Any focused discussion on this proposed policy advisory report?
Yes, one comment, or I guess it's a suggestion. After we have the public comment, the normal course would be to go to a dedicated meeting. Since we're going to have a special meeting, though, that's coming up in order to consider two PRRs, it looks like coming up with another meeting short term might be difficult. And if Director Fitcher believes that we can handle the two proposed PRRs, which I believe she said that she thought were fairly straightforward, that maybe we could then decide here to waive the requirement of a special meeting and have it at the same time when we have the PRRs presented, and maybe save everybody some time.
Director Fitcher, do you think that would be possible?
Yeah, I don't anticipate the two PRRs taking up, several hours. I don't think so. We're going to start with some of the simplest cases that we have. So I think that works. I did want to note that that's never mind, because I was thinking of the Rules Committee meeting, and that's something totally different. But yes, I think what Mr. Sweeney suggested should work.
Any more focused discussion on?
Can I?
Yes.
And I'm not sure this is the appropriate time to do it, but maybe a friendly amendment, because we'd have to waive the rules. So if this is the appropriate time to make a friendly amendment to the motion, that it both go out to public comment and that we then schedule this for hearing on the anticipated special meeting date in October, where we're going to consider PRRs.
Okay, so can someone make the motion with the amendment?
Chair Martinez, would it be appropriate for me to make the suggested amendment? And so what I present essentially that I so move that the proposed amendment be added to my previously stated motion.
Second.
Thank you. Any focused discussion on the new motion with the proposed amendment? There is none. I'll do a roll call vote here. Mr. Campbell-Gooch?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Goddard?
Aye.
Dr. Hildreth?
Aye.
Mr. Holloway?
Aye.
Mr. Hughes?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye. Did you hear me?
Thank you. Ms. Ross?
Aye.
Mr. Sweeney?
Aye.
And Mr. Witzel?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well, so the motion carries. We will be voting on this the next special meeting along with the first couple of proposed resolution reports. With that, I think we can move on to public comment. I don't know if we received any public comment, Director Fitchard.
No, we didn't receive any for this meeting.
Then we can move on to any new business or announcements. There is none.
Chair Martinez,
yes.
If I could jump in real quick. Just as a matter of preparing for upcoming meetings, since the Electronics Meeting Act is currently scheduled to end in October and our November meeting is scheduled for the day before Thanksgiving, just as a matter of planning, could we address whether or not we should move that meeting to a different day?
Sure. Director Fitchard, I see your hand up.
No, I didn't have my hand up about that.
Okay, so the question is whether we should, can you say again when the governor's order expires?
So the governor's current executive order that allows us to do these electronically is scheduled to expire on October 28th.
Mm-hmm.
So assuming he doesn't extend that, then our next meeting would be in person on November 25th, which would be the day before Thanksgiving. With everyone unsure about the future of electronic meetings, it's been difficult to schedule in-person locations since everyone has to do them at Metro facilities.
Mm-hmm.
So this would give us an extra bit of time to try to find a location for a November meeting if we have it planned ahead of time.
Got it. Is our October meeting on the 28th?
The October meeting should be on the 28th, yes.
Does that affect, does the order cover us that day then, since it ends that day?
The order should end at 11:59 p.m., so we should still be covered.
All right, so is there any objection then to changing the November meeting, to moving up the November meeting to the 18th, or delaying the November meeting to the 2nd if we don't want to do it on that Wednesday before Thanksgiving?
Is there another option, just like move it up a day to like Tuesday?
We could also do that. Objection there. Do I need it, Ms. Ross?
I'd like to see it moved up a week to the 18th in November.
Okay. Am I going to need a motion on this, Todd?
Yes, since it's set by our bylaws, I believe that we have to do it on the fourth Wednesday. We'll need a motion.
Okay. So I will take a motion. Ms. Ross, is your hand still raised?
No, I make a motion that we change our meeting date for November to November 18th.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any focused discussion on that? There's none. I'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Campbell-Gooch?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Goldberg?
Aye.
Dr. Hildreth?
Aye.
Mr. Holloway?
Aye.
Mr. Hughes?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Ross? Ms. Ross?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Sweeney?
Aye.
And Mr. Witzel?
Aye.
No, I vote aye as well. So our November board meeting will happen on the 18th instead of the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. In terms of scheduling the special meeting in October, do we need to vote on a date for that, or is that something that can just be set up?
I think that we need to send out a doodle poll to make certain that everyone can pick a date. But I was thinking about having it on October, the week of the 19th.
Okay, so we'll look out for the doodle poll then. Is there any other announcements?
I have something I want to say. I just want to thank the board for all of their input and feedback as we went through this process. As I was working on something for the policy committee, for the mayor's policy committee, I thought about how many meetings that we have actually had, which we've had over 40 meetings since I've begun working here. And so I just want to thank you all for your commitment and dedication. It is a lot of sacrifice to continue to forge ahead, to do what we're doing for this community. And I just wanted to let you know I appreciate all the help that you've given me to stand this department up and to keep moving forward, even in times of adversity. And so I just wanted to let you guys know I appreciate you. I appreciate your commitment, your dedication to Nashville, and thank you all very much.
Thank you, Director Pritchard.
Thank you.
We all very, very much appreciate the long hours that you put into making sure that MSEO is functioning and helping us along the way so that we're prepared for board meetings. Thank you very much. Any other announcements or new business? If not, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Just one point of privilege, Chair. I'm sorry, one point of personal privilege. I just wanted to remind those who are listening to make sure that they have checked their voter registration status, and if not yet, completed their U.S. Census. Just wanted to encourage those who are listening to make sure that they do that. The census enumeration date is quickly approaching on September the 30th, and the voter registration deadline is October 5th. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Both very important reminders that we have to be registered if we can, and census is very important. September 30th is the last day to do that. Was there a motion, Mr. Pritchard? Your hand up.
Yeah, and I just wanted to remind everyone that our last public comment town hall meeting is going to be on Monday, September the 28th at 5 p.m. And so if you know people in the faith who are faith-based, who are formerly incarcerated, who are senior citizens or homeless or experiencing housing insecurity, to please call in and let us know what you desire in a police chief, as well as what you want in public safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Pritchard. And I will take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard. A second.
A second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. And any focused discussion on that? No. Then I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Campbell Gooch.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Goddard.
Aye.
Dr. Hildreth.
Aye.
Mr. Holloway.
Aye.
Mr. Hughes.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Aye.
Ms. Ross. I didn't quite catch that.
Aye.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. Mr. Sweetie.
Aye.
And Mr. Witzel.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. It is 6:06 and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.